Hey everybody, thanks for coming out to another episode of Mythrights. Today we have Ames with us. Hey Ames, you go by SchuNeko on the internet. Why don't you introduce yourself to us and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone. My name, as said, I go by SchuNeko online or Amy in real life, and I have been. Well, I was a gamer a few years ago, and then I became disabled, and I stopped gaming, and it really kind of left a hole in my life. And so then I started following other people gaming, and I decided I was going to get a Switch, and now I game again. I also write, and basically, you can find me on Twitter under SchuNeko, and there's a link to my AO3 account. Other than that, I don't really get around much, and it's really hard to say anything else about it because adaptive equipment for disabled gamers is disabled anything really is kind of hard to come by. So if I do find something, I will happily let Mythlorn know and they can, pass it on to you guys.
I am so glad that you're here with us today. It's something that really doesn't get talked about in the community. It's just swept under the rug with every other form of representation, and ableism is just kind of assumed in the gaming industry, even in a majority of the characters that you will find in games. And that's really not cool at all.
No.
And understandably, I know it's hard to meet every kind of disability on level just because it's so vast and there's so many different forms of adaptive equipment that are needed. On the other hand, that's not a reason to not address, needing adaptive equipment, because even if you
Right.
just start making for visually impaired, hard of hearing, mobility issues, even if you just started with that on any varying console or for PC,
Yeah.
that would be a start, and then people could tweak it from there. And there's a big market for it because there are a lot of gamers who find meaning in gaming,
Yeah.
and they have,
Exactly.
as you said, it was a big part of your life before you became disabled and you lost a lot of your mobility. Um, but now it means even more because that's your outlet, that's your freedom, and basically it's very hard for you to interact with the lack of equipment. Before
Yeah.
we go any further today, I just wanted to have a quick word with our viewers about respect for disabled people and how to have conversations with disabled people. Um, Disabled people are not required to divulge any personal medical history to you, and they don't have to prove to you that they are disabled or that they need any piece of mobility equipment, including service animals that they own. Your personal approval or disapproval are completely unnecessary and they're unwelcome. If a disabled person chooses to share this information with you, like Ames is sharing with us today, that's their choice, but you should never make them feel pressured to do so. An able person's opinion on how to cure the disabled or their disability is also unwelcome, and it's not appropriate in conversation ever. And again, I just really want to thank you, Ames, for coming here and sharing this with people. And it's just, I know it's become a massive hurdle for you, but I've also never known you to back down from a challenge. So that was why, when I was thinking about we need to talk about this, you were the first
Yeah.
person that came to mind. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you contacted me. And it's been a thought of mine that I really do want to get more representation out there, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else. It needs to be done.
It's awesome.
And I really hope this helps, somebody like me who thought they couldn't do it at all anymore for a long time and realize that they can and they should be able to.
Is to say, because it hasn't stopped you, as far as I know. You've had to get some adaptive equipment and stuff, but you're back at it with fan fiction, and you're back into the gaming community. I think you were talking about doing some Twitch streaming, weren't you?
Yeah, I really want to, and I want to. I mean, I want to cosplay as well because it's a big part of my life, and it takes me forever because I've only got one hand to do it, but I can do it, and that's another thing that I want everyone to know is that you can do it. It may not be perfect, it may not win awards, but if you're having fun, by all means, go for it.
I think that's fantastic. That's really fantastic advice. Because I mean, just as even though I have my own disabilities, mine are not primarily physical. For the most part, I mean, I have some bad days where nothing's happening. But I'm able to, as far as I can use both of my hands, I can use my feet. And so for me, the things that I don't even have to think about, like running the sewing machine, um, and I can do those things, but people who have mobility impairments or cognitive impairments, the issue of pushing the switch with their toe and guiding the fabric with their hands at the same time might not be even feasible. You've only got one hand, and
Yeah.
I think you do still have quite a bit of trouble with your feet before you tripped over your cat and broke your leg. um, you're in trouble with me. You didn't even tell me. I just found out you were in the hospital. Shame on you. Because I'm sure that was
Yeah.
top on your list. Message Mythlorn, tell dying. See soon. Feed cats. K thanks.
Yeah, I was kind of going through a little bit of am I gonna ever get home? Uh,
Well, you made it. You did it. The nurses were
yeah,
so sick of you, they forcibly ejected you.
pretty
Congrats.
much.
That means you're feeling well enough to come home.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
speaking of adaptive equipment, I know that you're telling people that they can do this, like, as far as whatever you're willing to share with us, what sort of assistive devices are you using to create your stories, especially with fan fiction? Are you using Dragon or any of the software, or do you just kind of struggle it out?
I just kind of struggle it out because, for me at least, I mean, by all means, if you think that's gonna help you, do it because it's a way to, write your story. Is if you need to use Dragon, go for it. But for me, I am old school. I love the sound of a keyboard.
So, are you writing on your tablet and your phone, or are you actually writing on PC or a console?
I write on my computer, but the way that the computer I have works is it doesn't communicate very well. So I write on my computer, but then if I have any editing or when I'm posting, that I do on my iPad because the touchscreen is much bigger and it's a lot easier to do it. So it is kind of annoying having to go from one thing to another, but it's let me do it.
Gotcha.
So it's worth it to me.
I know for the sake of my tablet, I actually have a keyboard that I can hook to my tablet and type. Because I still need a little of the haptic feedback because of what happened with my brain. And it makes it hard for me to know where my fingers are in space if I don't use an actual keyboard that kind of clicks when I push the key. It just helps my
Yeah.
brain find the key. It's
Yeah.
like having echolocation in my fingertips,
Yeah.
but it's helped me bridge that gap with what I lost when
Yeah.
whatever the heck happened to me. Uh, my brain needed a reboot. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you've ever given that a shot, or if you would recommend it, because then you could just type directly onto your tablet, or do you think your tablet couldn't handle it?
Yeah. For certain things I do have a keyboard for my tablet. So if I know there's going to be any extensive writing, I will use the keyboard.
Gotcha.
But if it's just a touch here, a touch there, you hit a button, then it's all on the iPad screen because I do have a problem with my vision
Okay.
and connecting. Like I can't do it with small words, so I need the bigger view and to be able to put my finger on it,
Gotcha.
and
So
that kind of helps like me calibrate like it would, like you're saying, get your brain into it. Like I have a lot of issues with my brain not connecting to my body
right.
in the right way, so touching it kind of helps that filter through,
Yeah, you're using that
if that
as
makes
a
any kind of
yeah.
sense.
It's building a bridge over the
Yep,
damaged parts of your brain and using the rest of your senses to make up for what your body's having a hard time with. And
yep,
that's, I mean, that's the origin of all adaptive equipment. And so you're the kind of person that adaptive equipment is awesome for. Um,
yeah.
and do you think, just on a writing level, just on that creative level, does that kind of become part of your writing process? Do you find that your readers kind of relate more or less to your stories because they're inclusive? Like, do you find now you write your fictions differently now that you've gone through everything that you have and you have all this adaptive tech and you're having to kind of change things so you can keep doing what you love? Do you think that
Yeah.
that plays into your fiction, into your writing and your creative process?
I honestly do. And I have actually had readers who have commented me and they've said thank you for putting this character in there. I've never seen another character, like not necessarily what they have, but what a family member has, or a friend, or something, and they said, and it made me like so happy when I saw that comment, because it was a kind of a exploratory thing for me, as well as a wanting to get that person, that character out there, and wanting to see what they did in that situation, being a disabled person, because you never see it, and if you do, you don't really see it expressed properly. It
Yeah.
almost feels like they're in there, but they didn't research it.
Yeah, that's
It's
what
what they think
it's what we call
that person is
tokenism.
like.
Yeah, it's what we call tokenism. They
Yeah,
exist because they have a disability, but we don't know how it works.
right,
You know, you can use the character Sheldon, for example, as an autistic representation of a character that's very tokenistic in a lot of ways. And while
right,
it's positive to have that representation out there, it's good for people to remember that there are lots of autistic people among them, and neurodivergent people. Um, but the representation was very poor and it was very stereotypical. And while there are certainly, you know, stereotypes exist for a reason, usually because they, I don't want to say that they're accurate, but they're frequent, but that, or the most visible, but it doesn't show the nuances of, for example, autism. You know, it's not a comic
right,
relief for the abled. It's, you know, even when I was in a wheelchair, I don't think it really occurred to me until I was firmly planted in that wheelchair. And we have lots of disabled people in my family, people that need mobility devices all the time and guide dogs and everything else. So, I mean, I understood on a level as a fairly abled disabled person that there were hurdles. But what I did not understand until I got into a wheelchair and I couldn't use the right side of my body was that, holy crap, these sidewalks, I can't maneuver a wheelchair over this. Even with a high mobility wheelchair, I can't get around or over these curbs. Or these little nubs that they put, for the blind with guide dogs and stuff on the side of the road, that might be great for them, but now my wheelchair is stuck. Please help me. Um,
Yeah.
or like my college, where I started going around and looking at all of the lack of access for people with mobility issues. A friend of mine was in a wheelchair at college when I was at my university, and I would invite him places, and then I would realize he couldn't get into the building because it only had steps, and he was in a wheelchair. There were no elevators, there was no lift, there was no ramps. So when you go around and you realize how very little um, representation there is and very little realistic. I mean, it's just like, what are you supposed to do for somebody in a wheelchair, in a building, in a fire? I mean, you're just
Yeah.
going to have to, you're either going to stay in the building and die because there's no elevator, or you have to hope that somebody's beast enough to pick you up and carry you down the steps and help you. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just, I mean, it goes to such an extent, and it's so pervasive, and because abled people in their privilege, and when I say privilege, because it's not a problem for them, it's not a problem,
Yeah.
just do not comprehend. It's just like every day I go to my computer and I pick up my controller, and I can do that, but you have trouble with one of your hands and pushing buttons
Yeah.
and sitting there for any period of time, and how do you support the side of your body that's weak? Is there, there really aren't as many adaptive chairs for gamers either. Like, as far as people, I mean, this year I think I've actually seen a couple. Like, I just ordered a chair that actually has the ability to tilt and has a footrest for the days that the right side of my body is really bugging me again. And I can change the way the armrest sits to support my arm while I hold the controller. But before then, I don't think I saw much in the way of, it's like you got a recliner and you pop the disabled person in there with a controller, and you just told them to figure it out, prop up some pillows, or
Yeah.
and that's just not living in the real world for someone with a disability. um,
Yeah. I'm very specific about where I sit and how I sit. And if there's a chair that has no arms, I will not sit in it. I will not even try, because I know that I'm not going to sit there for however long and just let my arm hang at my side, because I mean,
that's asking
it
for
gets
trouble.
uncomfortable and it
And
just looks weird.
yeah, and are you
So,
gonna get up? Are you gonna be able to get up, because armrests
yeah.
do help you get up? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
provide stability when you're standing or sitting. Um,
Yeah, that is the other consideration, is I need that help to stand up, because it's not only, I mean, yes, it's my arm for gaming, but it's not only my arm, it's also my leg. So if I don't have the armrest as a point of stability on that side, my left side can't handle all that work. I would love it if it could, but it can't.
all right,
So,
so while we're on that subject, I actually kind of want to touch on games and gaming and disabled. I mean, me. You could get me on a rant, and I could go about how poorly represented people are with disabilities in games, and how they're magically cured all the time, and suddenly everything's better, and that's not how that is in real life.
no,
And that the
unfortunately not.
yeah, that the representation isn't very good there. Or magically they have a horrible life-threatening injury, and then, oh yeah, a druid frittered by and cured them, and now magically they're fine, even though they were like crushed under the Empire State Building. Because that's very realistic. And I'm all for representation, to an extent, but when they just make a character tokenly disabled, I start frothing. Oh yeah, they were horribly maimed, but they're never going to have a day where their knee doesn't work, or their arm doesn't work, or they have scars that hurt or their mobility is limited because, magic. And I love magic. I really do. But I think all, there's only so much magic before we hit God mode, where,
Right.
unless you're some sort of magical space fairy coming down and going, and now everything is healed and you will never have any pain ever again, chances are good most of these characters having excruciatingly horrible injuries that they survive are probably gonna at least ache when it rains.
Yeah.
So I do to some extent feel like that's where the gaming industry really lets disabled people down. I can't name names specifically because I don't want to. I don't want to start a dog pile. But I'm thinking of very specific gaming companies with a lot of vitriol. But
Yeah.
if you could sit down, like, I think that if you could sit down with the gaming industry in general and, I mean, talk about the kind of games that you would like to play. For example, what are some of your current favorite games? I'm pretty sure Animal Crossing is up there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up there. It's probably the favorite right now.
Do you have any
There's no
others at the
probably
moment?
about it. It is the
It is
favorite.
the favorite. Do you have any other games that you're playing right now on or trying to play on console or other than Switch?
I did find, I think it's this indie game, and it's called My Time at Portia.
Okay.
And it's a lot like Animal Crossing. And so I guess in that sense, it's kind of why I gravitated towards it.
So that makes sense.
Because it has a lot of the same mechanic.
And that was a
And I
mechanic
mean, I
you.
guess the only one that would be different from that kind of game is I love this since I was younger and playing games is Okami.
Okay, yeah, Okami is a good
So,
one. It's a good solid game.
yeah, so I got it to basically try to see if I could still play it.
And how is
And
that
the
going?
unfortunate thing is there's a timed portion, and I can't get my fingers to do what I'm supposed to do. So I tried, like, I'm not kidding you, 30 times going through the whole cutscene and everything each time
And no
to
luck.
get this challenge, and I couldn't do it.
All right, so
And
hold that thought because it's brilliant. I'm about to go on a rant. Um, all right, so I see this. I just want to, fellow gamers, listen to this woman. I go into forums and I hear people complaining there shouldn't be easy modes on games. If you suck so bad, you shouldn't play games. Blah, blah, blah. Holy abled crap, Batman. I really want you to consider before you go to forums and you start ranting about how, the games are too hard for the little nubs who can't do the thing. There are people with actual disabilities who want to keep playing the game but can't do certain things like the timed events. That's why game companies actually add in an easy mode or a story mode where you can play and you don't have to worry about mad crazy platforming skills or, beating that monster in a certain time period or being able to push the buttons really fast and mash the buttons really fast during cutscenes for quick times. They make that specifically so that people who have disabilities, and there are lots and lots of people who have disabilities, can play the game and enjoy it. Rant over. Back to you.
it's true. It's true. I did, and I also got Ori and the Will of the Wisp.
Google is sassing you in the background. I love it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I love
I'm
it.
turning off my phone. I
don't have to
don't
turn
know if
off your
that's going to
phone.
make you lose me, but that's what I'm doing.
I think we'll be okay.
All right.
All right.
Well,
So,
anyway, so
I
I
guess.
got Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and I warred with myself completely because right in the game, it tells you the modes And if you go to easy mode, it says for those of you who want to, settle like be more in the story and not play the game. It literally disses you like right at the start. And
That's
then you
harsh.
go to normal mode and it's like how the game is meant to be played. And I'm just like, are you?
Wow, that's rough. I wonder because I usually know from what I understand of that Div team, that's that's unusual. I have
Yeah.
Ori in the Blind Forest, and I'll have to go back and I just want to double check because that may be something that I missed. But
Yeah.
I would really like to. Yeah, I should
I
probably.
mean,
Could you bring that to their attention? Would you be willing to message the game company because if you, I believe it might need to be through Steam, but
yeah.
you can message them and say, "Look, I have a disability, and this is." A little harsh because I really want to enjoy your game, and there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to. So thanks for putting an easy mode in, but please don't diss me. It's not my fault.
Right.
Um, so I guess,
Part of me just wonders again if that's it is. It's probably part of my anxiety, but like, yeah, other gaming people are going to have anxiety, and
well,
it's
yeah,
not
and
a good message to start out a game.
I mean, really, that comes from a place of privilege. And when I say privilege, again, I don't mean that you think you're better than others. It's just until it occurs to you that this is really a problem. It's not a problem for you, so it's not a problem. I'm in my case, like right now, this is privilege on my part because I didn't go through the easy mode. I said how the game was meant to be played, and I grabbed it and went through with it, and I did the thing. I didn't go to easy mode and see what that was like. So that's privilege on my part because I didn't need to. And I need to check that. And that's why I'm glad that you say that because that's how we learn to see things more openly and respectfully from other people's point of view. Because yeah, there can be like ultimate face ripping, nostril pulling hard mode for those of us who are able to do that. And you were
Right.
actually a bit of a beast back in your day. I'm sure it's hard enough as it is to kind of have to take that humble pie and you normally would have
Yeah.
probably been ripping it up with the rest of us, but now you don't have that option. And it's good that you're acknowledging that. I'm actually really happy that you brought that to my attention because I will go take a look and I will use my little feelers too and see how I feel about it and if I think it's really disrespectful. The nice thing about basically being a small indie dev team is that you can always kind of mention something as respectfully as possible. Just, hey, have you considered how this comes off? Like, because the intention might not have been cruel at all. It was just a moment of
Right.
privilege. They didn't realize that's how it comes off. But I will take a look at that. I guess that
I
kind of
think it actually said if you want to focus more on the story instead of the gameplay, and it's kind of saying, are you telling me I got this game but I don't want to play it?
right. It probably could have been worded a little differently.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like, yeah, if it was worded different, I would have been like, all right, whatever.
right.
This is what I got.
But
But yeah.
now, if you could just if you could take, let's just say, our devs from Ori aside and say, these are the things I need help with. What would you tell them you need? Would it be like an adaptive controller? Would it so like for hands, for foot pedals, visually, hearing wise? What would make the Switch and Ori on the Switch a different kind of experience for you that would be more immersive?
I feel like because I have a lot of depth perception problems, and it tells you, I mean, that game in particular, almost any game that has like the jumping mechanic,
Mm-hmm.
you don't jump. It's hard to tell how high and where exactly you're going to hit. So I don't know if that's anything that they can change in a game or if that's anything they can adapt, but there is points in Ori where I feel like that is the game, is jumping and making sure you hit the right point. And it kind of came to this point for me where I'm like, okay, I have to take the hit just to be able to get through this certain point because I couldn't figure out where my timing was off
Well,
and how I was supposed to do it without actually taking a hit. And I mean, there are even times in Animal Crossing where I'm not exactly in the right point, but like I can't see that. And so I do something I don't mean to do. So, I mean, with Animal Crossing, it's not that big of a deal. You can pretty much correct
right.
anything. But in a game like Ori and the Wisp, you take that hit at the wrong time and you're done.
Well, you know,
Basically.
that's a really great thing to mention because I've actually been considering just as I'm kind of sitting on the cusp of doing some indie game design myself. One of the things that can be done is that what we would do is leave physical markers of where to jump. I actually saw someone who, I'm probably not supposed to admit this, but I love Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I can't mention the company name because I'd probably get a cease and desist. But they had edited the game with little sparkles on the wall of bright colors. For people who were having, it's a side scroller, so people were having trouble with it's a dark game, very dark, and depth was hard to see, especially in a side scroller. And they, you know, that particular game was fairly groundbreaking in the way it kind of broke the 3D barrier with some of the interactions between foreground and background. There were doors you could actually go through by going up, and that was not a common thing in side scrollers at that time. But they were able to edit that game in a way that there were little sparklies wherever you could go. And because people with visual disabilities who still wanted to play the game and could see, fairly okay, but in the darkness it was a problem and they didn't know where they could jump or double jump, they actually
Right.
had marked out those places for them. And that is something that could be done as an adaptive mode for the game.
Right.
Because, I
I
mean,
mean, I can
basically,
see like those players that are doing it on hard might not want that help, but for people who are just trying to
but
play the
providing it.
game and, get through it are, that would definitely be a thing that would help because you wouldn't be stuck
Yeah, it would
in
be
the
a
same position I
it
am
would
in.
be a mode that you could turn on because I mean you already have hitboxes on characters, you already have contact points in the game, and there's no reason you can't just make a contact point sparkly. It's
Yeah.
zero extra effort. Really, you go through more trouble to hide contact points than you
Right.
do to make them visible. And I mean, if somebody wants to go through the game hard mode, that should be an option for them, just as there should be a mode for people with a visual disability or mobility disability, disability where, I can't hit the button that many times that fast in a row. Can I just hit X once during a cutscene, or you know what
Yeah.
I mean? During the quick time event, instead of having to like mash the X button as fast as I can so I don't die, could we just hit the X button once? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I know that can ruin immersivity for an abled player, but on the other hand, it ruins immersion for a disabled player when they can't get past a certain point in the game. So definitely, we need some modes. And of course, I know there's also controllers because I mean, I've been looking because one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that we were like providing some links to anyone who had a Kickstarter going for adaptive equipment like foot pedals, hand pedals, switches, levers, push buttons, scrolly
Yeah.
mice, the kind of things that we could actually hook to any console. a generic
Right.
console hookup that would, allow that player to adapt to the game, and to the console. And that's not absolutely unattainable. That would be something that
Mm.
I actually, I am not the smartest tech person on the planet, but I do believe that it's doable to an extent that, we could at least get you some buttons you could push with your foot, for example, for
Mm.
jumping. And you're having a bad day when your hands hurt and you need the one hand for motion, and then you can use your foot for jumping. That is if your hands and your feet are coordinating that day. Some
Yeah.
days they don't. I get that very much. The stairs are my enemy. Um, but I just I'm at a loss when I think about all of and the adults and the kids and the teens and the older adults who are old time players, because now us 80s babies are aging. It's like the car is
Yeah.
starting to make a horrible sound, so you just it sounds really expensive, so you just
Yeah.
turn the radio up a little bit louder and try to ignore it.
Yeah.
Old age
Well,
is
that's the thing
coming.
I was thinking. I was thinking of some of the adaptive equipment is so expensive. And you look at it and you're like, oh, this will be perfect. How much is it? Yeah, no.
Yeah, and the bad
And
part is like a lot of it, it's unnecessarily expensive.
yeah,
I'm watching parents who, I mean, I have a couple of friends who are parents of disabled children, and that want a game. And I mean, I've watched them hook up, foot switches. It's like some taco switches and some wires and some pressure pads, and they're not expensive. It's like they're spending like maybe $30 or $40 on materials out of pocket. So yeah, like
yeah,
maybe 150 would be reasonable for something like that. I mean, we're not talking like, optic guidance where you've got the sensors on your head, and where you can move your eye and it tracks your eye movement and then types the word. We're not getting quite that fancy.
yeah,
Um, so for that, if it's $1,000, I understand, because that is a lot of technology. But when we're
right?
talking like oleo tubs and taco switches, I don't feel like um,
Mm.
it should be quite so astronomically expensive.
Yeah,
And just I think that this is just my humble opinion. I think the first console or even PC gaming company that really takes into account disabilities and makes their adaptive equipment affordable and accessible, they're going to rake it in hand over fist.
oh yeah,
They will be more successful than any other company on the history of the planet. I can just almost guarantee you. It's just very sad that they don't realize that there's a market. Of course, they also didn't realize that women and queer people are like 65 to 70% of their market.
right?
Yeah, good luck convincing them of that too. But like, I just want to take them by their precious little faces and be like, so many people want you to shut up and take their money. Could you
Yeah,
do this? You know what? Here's a thought: make them customizable and inexpensive. If somebody wants
yeah,
a blue or pink adaptive foot switch, please give it to them. If we can have console skins, we can have adaptive equipment that is accessible, inexpensive, readily available, and custom.
I mean, if
It's
they're worried that like we're not gonna make the right thing, talk to you disabled people.
You have to say, talk to your gamers, because
Find
obviously,
out what they need
and meet
and
them on
make
their
that.
level. Yeah, exactly. Because when it comes down to it, there's going to be maybe only 4 or 5 main types of adaptive equipment that is adjustable. And
Yeah.
that already, it's not terribly expensive. It's not hard to do. It really isn't. I mean, when you consider that I've seen ports that go sideways, you know, I've seen ports go from like literally from like Xbox to PlayStation, and you want to talk about things getting mangled during a port, as far as coding and gameplay and engine function and all the things that go wrong when you. I've seen them take that and make it work and
Yeah.
work well. They have overcome, if they can overcome an engine issue, which can be hideous, then they can assuredly make a foot pedal that you can plug into your controller somewhere that allows you to jump by pushing the foot pedal. You know what I'm saying? That's not even vaguely rocket science. So it's
Yeah.
doable. It's doable. It's financially viable. It's all of those things. And gaming companies just basically ignore it. And I doubt anyone's probably going to listen to the podcast, but I think it's just really important that one way or another, I get at least one voice out here. I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically the point of this podcast is to let creatives, our artists, our writers, our gamers, our developers have contact with people who live these real, very real lives.
Right.
So,
And I'm saving up for a streaming computer, which is why I haven't done it yet because I don't have a streaming computer. But yeah, as soon as I get to doing that, like I would be happy to shoot a link along to you if you wanna add that.
I'd love to. And, maybe one of the things we could also do is either do like a GoFundMe or a donation process if someone wants to help you move along so that you can do some stuff on Twitch. And I mean, I'm sure you would be fantastic. I would love to be Twitch buddies with you and come to your streams and hang out and pester you in chat. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll see what we can do, and maybe we'll include a
Yeah.
link if people want to donate to the fund for you to get a gaming rig that can support you streaming.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I forgot to add is an earlier question
Mhm.
about me using Dragon is I'm very self-conscious of how I talk.
Right.
So I'm always worried that Dragon, the one I have is kind of in its infancy, and I just kind of worry about it picking up on that. And I don't want to write something twice
Right.
if I don't have to.
Well, if it's any comfort to you, Dragon right now is fairly functional. And it actually spends time learning you. It'll have you read words over and over and over again, and it's kind of annoying, but it learns your voice and it learns the way that you talk. And if you have a stutter, if you have a slur, if you know what I mean, those things that make it really hard, Dragon does work around that because the people who
Mm.
created the software created it for people with those kind of problems. So the older versions of it, it's not so great. The newer versions,
Yeah.
I used one like when I had my first TIA. I actually used that for about 6 months, and I was writing all sorts of fan fiction. And I still had to go back, and there were still places I had to correct, but for the most part, it was pretty good. And I,
Yeah.
never felt like they were, taking the piss, so to speak.
Yeah.
I never felt like it was making fun of me or it couldn't understand me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an option, but it may not be for you. Everybody is different. Or, later
Yeah.
on, you may try it, and you're in a place in your life where you want to use it, and it works. But you.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so, I guess if you could leave our listeners with, one thought, one thing, especially those with disabilities who are doubting themselves or that feeling like they can never go back to the way their life used to be and do the creative things they love, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, try. Because you're, to an extent, making yourself miss out. I mean, maybe you find out it can't work, but you found out. You're not sitting there wondering, and most likely you'll find something that lets you do it, and it's going to make your life so much better. So just try. That's all I can say.
I think that's all anyone can ever really do is just try their best.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that's super sound advice because I would much rather try and fail than spend my whole life wondering how it might have been if I just not given up. Um,
Yep.
and even without a disability, I think that that's super applicable to a lot of things in life.
Yeah.
So very sound. But thank you so much for joining us today and having this chat with
Sure.
us. And I'll be in
It was
touch
fun.
with you. And I'm sure my listeners can't wait to hear from you. So thanks again, Ames. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome anytime.
All right. Well, that's gonna be it for Myth Rights today. And thanks so much for having a listen and hearing us out. And that's Myth signing off. Have a great day.